Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Fantasy Fellow Show. I'm your host, theFellowKGB. You can follow me on Twitter at theFellowKGB. And it is Wednesday, September 9th. It's almost 6 o'clock. I went live a little bit earlier than I thought I would. But yeah, we're going to be rolling through my start-sit charts for week one. We got a Thursday night game starting tomorrow night, NFL kickoff to the season with the Chiefs and the Texans. So a lot of excitement here. But basically, I'm going to be doing this live, I think, every Wednesday night this week. I'm probably going to be doing a live Monday night show, too, to discuss waiver wire and kind of talk about the weekend stuff. But yeah, Wednesday night kickoff, here we go. If you go to the fantasyfellowship.com, you're going to just click on the week one start sit charts, and I'll show you what these are going to look like. But basically, I'm going to fill out these tables here and tell you guys where I'm thinking I'm going to be starting these players. So we'll start with the Texans side here. I think if you drafted Deshaun Watson, you know you're going to start him. And then basically the same thing with Mahomes too. I'm not here to tell you guys to start Deshaun Watson or Patrick Mahomes. You're starting Clyde Edwards-Helaire. You spent a first-round pick on him. You're starting Tyreek Hill. You're starting Travis Kelce. So these guys are all locked into our lineups, no problem. But then you got some questions. You know, guys like David Johnson, who you probably spent a fourth or fifth-round pick on. You're going to probably want to leave him in there as your RB2, and we'll see how it goes. We'll reevaluate after the game, of course. But this one's probably going to be heavily, passing attack. I think we might see either team jump off to a hot start and have to, rely on the pass here. So David Johnson is a guy that could be interesting in PPR leagues, having to get more receiving work than normal. We'll see if he can get enough carries in this one. Maybe the Chiefs are just too far ahead where they kind of pivot and they're throwing the ball a lot. But go ahead and start David Johnson as your PPR RB2. And then the really interesting play here is, for me, it's Will Fuller. You drafted Will Fuller healthy. This is the time to start him, so don't leave him on your bench. I really don't even know who the starting Chiefs cornerbacks are. I don't really feel confident in their secondary, so go ahead and start Will Fuller, no problem, wide receiver 3. And then we got even more question marks here with Brandon Cooks. I'm going to leave a link here for the practice reports via RotoWire. We'll see what these look like real quick. I might have to relink that. I think that might be last year's link. But anyways, you'll have practice reports here. And Will Fuller, we're starting him. Brandon Cooks, wide receiver 2. We don't really know what's going on with him. I know he missed practice today. I think he's got the quad injury at the moment right now. He was limited the day before, but it's not looking good. He's going to be a game-time decision. So if you were relying on Brandon Cooks to be in your starting lineup this week, you might want to look elsewhere. Even if he starts, I really don't know if I'm going to be comfortable rolling him out there. So this is making me like Randall Cobb a little bit more as a wide receiver 3, especially in PPR leagues. You probably got him at the end of your draft on your bench. But especially if Cooks is out, like Randall Cobb becomes a really sneaky flex play. So I'm into that. I'm into the passing weapons here. I'm probably not starting Duke Johnson. I'd like to see what happens with this backfield between David and Duke before I trust Duke. But you're going to go ahead and throw David Johnson out there because of the draft capital. And then I got some notes here to just keep an eye on Jordan Akins and Darren Fells. We're not starting the Houston tight ends just yet, but they might be something that we're interested in. Deshaun Watson's always been pretty productive with his tight end, so I'm curious to see who separates himself there. And then with the Chiefs here, the guys that we're kind of questioning on is Sammy Watkins. He had a really disappointing season last year, but he kind of came on strong towards the end of the playoffs. So I'm open to Sammy Watkins being flex. I don't know if I trust it yet. I kind of want to wait one more week. But as we saw last year, I mean, the biggest game of his season came week 1. Tyreek Hill gets hurt. Sammy Watkins goes off for like almost 50 fantasy points. So I think Sammy Watkins, if you're on the fence about him, you can flex him at best, but it's kind of a boom bust kind of a pick there. And then same for Mecole Hardman. I'm stressing patience with Mecole Hardman. You probably drafted him, in the 9th, 10th, 11th round of your drafts. And we're interested to see if they really do commit to ramping up his workload and his snaps and his targets. But again, I think I'm feeling most comfortable about Mahomes, Clyde, Tyreek, Kelce. And then I think I'm willing to wait and see what Sammy Watkins and Hardman look like. And then there's Daryl Williams here, who's going to be the RB2. He's going to be a much better pass blocker than Clyde Edwards. So we could see Daryl Williams on the field a little bit more than we would expect. I don't know if Daryl Williams is going to get the goal line touches. I don't know how that's going to work, but I'm definitely keeping an eye on Daryl Williams. Especially on waiver wires. He might be a guy that we're talking about that maybe he played almost 50-50 snaps with Clyde and he ends up scoring a touchdown or something. Daryl Williams is probably the name to keep an eye on here. So this one's going to be really fun. I hope it's high scoring. And for those that invested in the Chiefs and Texans, good luck. But I'm also, so with these start-sit charts on the fantasyfellowship.com, I'm going to type up some things that I'm thinking here. And then yeah, so go ahead. And I kind of update these throughout the week. So if you want to check in on Monday night or Tuesday, I think that's when I'll start updating the start sit charts. And then I kind of start adding the notes as the season progresses, or as the week progresses, and I get some injury information. So starting with the Sunday early games, we're going to kick it off here with Seattle at Atlanta. Again, I'm not here to tell you to start Russell Wilson. I'm not here to tell you to start Tyler Lockett. These guys are kind of locked in at our positions. My phone's going off. I'm sorry. I should have turned off the volume on that. But anyways, Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf, I'm locked into starting those guys. I think they're both wide receiver 1-2 potential this week. And then Chris Carson's going to be the interesting guy. I don't really trust the Atlanta Falcons passing offense or their rushing defense. So we could see Seattle jump out pretty hot out of the gate and try to establish this run with Chris Carson. So I'm super interested in these four guys. And I think Seattle's going to have a really simple fantasy evaluation for the rest of the year. These are the four guys that they're going to, funnel the offense through. And maybe we see Greg Olsen, kind of get some run here as a potential tight end streamer. So I'm keeping an eye on him. If he's on your waiver wire, just monitor his week 1 snap rates and his targets. And then there's Philip Dorsett. I know they signed Josh Gordon, but we're not really interested in those secondary receiving options. So the Seahawks, really straightforward: Russell Wilson, Chris Carson, Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf. Get them in your lineups. And then with the Falcons, it's also a really straightforward offense as well. You're starting Matt Ryan. The Seahawks pass defense should be a little bit improved with Jamal Adams back there, but it's still pretty suspect on the corners and the other safety. So Matt Ryan, this game's got the makings of being on the fast track, and we'll see how many points can be scored. But you're starting Matt Ryan as your QB1. Todd Gurley, he's healthy. As long as Todd Gurley's healthy, I'm going to roll him out as my RB2. And I know a lot of teams took advantage of the Seahawks pass rushing defense last year. So Gurley's entering a really good spot here. If you got him as your RB2, I think you might be looking pretty good after your draft with this one. And then I don't need to tell you to start Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley. You spent high picks on these guys. They're in our lineups unless they're either on bye week or injured. So go ahead and roll those guys out. But Hayden Hurst is the really interesting guy to watch on the Atlanta offense. He's stepping in for Austin Hooper. We'll see if he can get, the majority of those targets that Hooper got. I'm not expecting him to get 100% of those targets, but if he can be, 80 to 90% of that, Hayden Hurst is going to be a tight end 1 for most weeks. So we'll see if the weird off season and the kind of shortened practice time is enough for Hayden Hurst to be a tight end 1. But I think most people drafted Hayden Hurst to be their tight end 1. So the higher draft capital, probably you're just gonna go ahead and start Hayden Hurst right away. So I don't think the Seahawks are very good against the tight end either, but with Jamal Adams that might change. But otherwise, just guys on the bench to monitor. Russell Gage is going to be the slot receiver here, and then I'm really interested to see who gets the backup running back touches behind Todd Gurley. Is it Brian Hill? Is it Ito Smith? This is going to be a situation we're going to want to we want to know the answer to. If anything happens to Todd Gurley, we're going to want to know who the next man up is. And I think it might be Brian Hill, but it wouldn't surprise me if it's Ito Smith. So this is a really good noon game. I hope this one's on TV in my area, but otherwise we'll just have to monitor the score. There should be a lot of points in this one. So hopefully, hopefully everyone comes out healthy. Hopefully Todd Gurley can return to his old form. And the Russell Wilson, Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf is going to be fun. This might be a really good game for DFS play. I know I'm going to be looking at some of these plays. I know they're probably more expensive, but a guy like Metcalf or Calvin Ridley are a little bit cheaper than the wide receiver 1. So enjoy that game. I know I will. And then I guess we'll kind of make this one quick. We're looking at the Jets and the Buffalo Bills here. The Jets are going to Buffalo. Pretty simple evaluation here for the Jets. I wouldn't start Sam Darnold in a 1 QB. I wouldn't start him in a super flex. I'd consider him in a super flex if you kind of botched the draft and you had Sam Darnold as your 2. But we're not going to, especially against the Bills defense, we're not really looking for Sam Darnold at this spot here. But we're interested in his passing weapons. And yes, I think that's Le'Veon Bell, that's Jamison Crowder, and Chris Herndon. All these 3 guys have been healthy throughout the whole camp. And really none of the receivers have been healthy. Denzel Mims, Brashad Perriman. And I'm trying to remember who the 3rd or 4th guy was. But really, Denzel Mims just got back to practice this week. I think Brashad Perriman as well. So Jamison Crowder's been locked in. He's a really high floor PPR play. And they got Chris Herndon, who's also been making a lot of plays in practice. And it sounds like Sam Darnold's been that chemistry there has been hooked back up from 2018. So I'm super into Chris Herndon. You probably drafted him as your tight end 2, but if you got him as your 1, I think it's okay to roll him out and see what happens. Really, tight ends don't need a lot of targets to make our week. So if he gets 5-6 targets, that might be just enough to make our week. So I'm into Crowder and Herndon. I really don't trust the Jets, but if I had to put my money on it, those 2 guys should be the leading target receivers there. And then Le'Veon Bell, we know he's going to get touches. running the ball. And then it really sounds like Adam Gase is going to try to get him more involved in the passing game. So your draft capital on Le'Veon Bell was probably an RB2, and I hope it was a PPR league because that's where the Le'Veon Bell value is. So as long as Bell's healthy, you're going to keep him in as your RB2. So pretty simple fantasy evaluation here, but I guess some things to keep an eye on. I'm really interested to see how much work Denzel Mims gets right away in his first game, and then as well as Brashad Perriman. Both these guys are injured, but I'm optimistic that this could be a really fun offense if everyone comes back healthy and they get it rolling a little bit. So keep an eye on Mims and Perriman and just roll with the guys here on the left. And then we come to Buffalo. So Josh Allen got the new mustache looking really good. Makes me excited even more to have Josh Allen in the few leagues that I do. And he's going to be your QB1 this week. The Jets, again, they lost Jamal Adams. I really can't name too many Jets defensive players. I know they had a really good rushing defense last year, but I can't remember if they kept that all intact. So go ahead and start Josh Allen right away. And then because I like Josh Allen in this weak secondary of New York Jets, I'm liking Stephon Diggs, and I really think John Brown's got a chance to – with John Brown, all it takes is one play for him to make our week. And whether that's, 2 catches for 82 yards and a touchdown, that might just be enough. But John Brown showed up really well last year with the chemistry. So I'm really confident that Josh Allen can have enough, throwing potential here to get 2 wide receivers into our starting lineups this week. But because I think Buffalo's going to control this game and they might be able to get some big shots in early, they're going to probably look to run the ball consistently in the second half. So this means Devin Singletary is an option and Zach Moss. If you drafted Devin Singletary in, the 4th, 5th, or maybe even 6th round, you're probably going to run him out as your RB2. But I kind of see him more as a flex, and I see Zach Moss having similar value as a flex. If the Bills are up, by 2 scores, at halftime or something like that, we're going to see this team really shift to running the game or running the ball. And I think they want to get Zach Moss involved early this year. And Singletary is still going to get work, but I really think they want to try to have a 2-headed attack as we saw last year with Frank Gore. But Zach Moss is going to, he's going to be the potential goal line back. And I'm just interested to see who is the leading running back receiver for Josh Allen. So I like both guys. I like the game script here for for Buffalo. We're starting Buffalo defense. And then I'm keeping an eye on here. Just on my bench, I like Dawson Knox. He had a really good rookie season. And then Cole Beasley is just another guy to keep an eye on because he had really good chemistry with Josh Allen last year in the slot. But yeah, the Buffalo Bills offense is going to be a good week 1. It's going to be a fun season for the Bills. So I don't know. Everything's Bills on this one. So I guess start your Jets with, some limited expectations. Now we got Chicago Bears at the Detroit Lions. Mitchell Trubisky has been named the starting quarterback. So we'll see. I guess this is a really good spot for him to get his first, start against the Lions. He's had success against Detroit before. So we'll see if he can muster up enough here. But I'm not really starting Trubisky in a super flex league as my QB2. I think I'd rather wait and see what this offense looks like before I go in. But from this point, we're basically watching David Montgomery's status. It sounded like Tariq Cohen said some really positive things about Montgomery today, saying that his injury wasn't as severe as people are making it out to be. So I'm interested in seeing who they run out there if Montgomery can't play. Who's going to be the primary back? But either way, I think Tariq Cohen's got wider running back 2 value in PPR leagues. And then, you're starting Allen Robinson, no question. You drafted him, as a top 10, top 12 receiver. So he's going to be locked into your lineup either way. But the guy that I'm super he's a little bit of a sleeper, but I'm interested because he came on really strong at the end of last year, and he's a 3rd-year receiver this year. That's Anthony Miller. So he played a lot with Mitch Trubisky the last 2 years. So the chemistry is going to be there. And this passing, defense for Detroit has never really been anything to brag about. So I think, Cohen, Robinson, Miller, this could be actually a sneaky passing, option day for the Chicago Bears. And then I'm monitoring Jimmy Graham. We'll see. Apparently he was like the MVP of the Bears camp. So we'll see if Jimmy Graham can do anything, but I think you're just leaving him on the waivers or your bench for now. And just go ahead with Cohen as your RB2 in PPR leagues, maybe as a flex even. And then, Robinson's locked in, Anthony Miller. Miller's an interesting guy. If he's if you drafted him on your bench and there's a guy like Mike Evans who's out or something, we hear, Mike Evans kind of had the injury pop up today. But Anthony Miller might be a guy that I slide into my lineup if you have injury concerns. So keep an eye on on those injury reports, and we'll see what this Mitch Trubisky-led offense can do. And on the other side here, Matthew Stafford. I think most people drafted Stafford as their QB1, but for me, he's more of a QB2 in super flex leagues. I think this week, you'd have to have a really good backup to bench him in a standard league. So I guess that really depends on your league scoring and your format and stuff. But I don't know. The Lions' offense is, they've always kind of struggled against the Bears. And I know the Lions are going to be at full health, so I guess I could see him as a QB1. But I guess I'm really interested more in the receiving options here than starting Stafford. So you're starting Kenny Goliday. I know he was on the injury report today with a hamstring injury, so monitor those reports. If Goliday is limited or can't go, I'm thinking Marvin Jones is going to be a hell of a play. So make sure Marvin Jones is in your lineup. And then TJ Hawkinson, of course. There's been a lot of buzz about him in this training camp. And you probably drafted him as a fringe tight end 1. So if you don't have a really good option behind him, go ahead and start TJ Hawkinson. But there's just so much uncertainty with this Lions team where I feel best about the passing situation. But I think I need to wait and see about Kerryon Johnson, DeAndre Swift, and Adrian Peterson. There's really nothing that makes me feel good about starting either of these guys, especially week 1. I know Swift is kind of coming back from his injury. They listed Kerryon Johnson as the starter, but then they just signed Adrian Peterson. It's just kind of a huge mess. So I'm kind of taking the approach where I want to just get a game or two of sample, and we'll see what to do with this Lions backfield. But this one's going to be kind of a fun game. I think this could go either way, actually. As bad of a hype Mitch Trubisky gets, they still won, 7 or 8 games last year. So this one could be a game that goes either way. And I guess I feel really good about the players that I have listed up here. Just leave these guys on the bench. And then let's look at the other NFC North matchup of the week, the Packers at the Vikings. There's some really big news, I guess, before I start here. The Vikings edge rusher Danielle Hunter has been placed on IR. It doesn't sound like it's a serious IR placement like for the season or anything, but they're saying maybe 3 to 4 weeks that he could be out. So this is a huge deal for the Vikings defense. That's, they're going to be pretty young at cornerback position. They still have Harrison Smith, but I can't even name a cornerback off the top of my head. It's probably going to be one of their early round draft picks starting at corner. And then I really can't name any of their nose tackles or anything. So the Vikings defense is going to be a little bit suspect in this one. So I have Aaron Rodgers ranked as a low end quarterback 1 in this one. He's going to look best as your quarterback 2 in Superflex. But Aaron Jones, man, if you were able to get Aaron Jones in the second round of your drafts, I was looking around on his numbers, and he scored 28 points against this Vikings defense in Week 16, and then he scored 25 against the same defense back in Week 2. So that's 53 combined points against the Vikings last year. So I'm like all in on Aaron Jones this week. He might be one of my favorite DFS plays for the noon slate. And then Devontae Adams too. We talked about the Vikings cornerbacks being really inexperienced, and Rodgers is just going to feed him targets. So the offense for the Packers is going to be really simple. It's going to be Rodgers throwing the ball to Devontae, and wait, Dalvin Cook, why the question mark? I had the question mark on Dalvin Cook just in case he didn't sign or he was making a stink about a holdout. So for now, I think he's going to start. So don't really worry too much about that. But I'm still talking about the Packers at this point. So you're starting Rodgers, you're starting Jones, and Devontae Adams. And the one guy that might be interesting to flex is Allen Lazard, but I get it if you want to wait and see how this offense looks. But man, the Vikings secondary is actually pretty appetizing to me. So, and then I'm probably starting the Packers defense. If you remember in Week 16, they completely destroyed the Vikings. I think they held them to under 200 yards. I don't know if the Vikings offense scored a touchdown. They just held them to field goals or something like that. So I'm interested in the Packers defense. And then we're going to monitor all these guys down here with Jamal Williams being the backup running back. Marquez Valdez-Scantling had some buzz this summer. And then A.J. Dillon, we'll see if he can get some role. And then the tight ends, Robert Tonyan and Jay Sternberger, we really don't know what's going to happen with those guys. So on the Vikings side of things, I think Kirk Cousins can be a quarterback too in Superflex. And then, yes, I have Dalvin Cook here with a question mark. The question mark was just more about I think he's going to play, but it's in case anything happens at the end of the week and I don't know, any contract news. So at the moment right now, we'll start Dalvin Cook as our RB1. I think he had a really good game against the Packers Week 2. I can't remember. I don't think he played against the Packers in Week 16, but I know Week 2 he busted off like a 70 or 80-yard touchdown run. And the weak part of the Packers defense is going to be that run game. Everyone saw what Raheem Mostert did to this team. So go ahead and fire up Dalvin Cook if everything's clear for takeoff. And then Adam Thielen, this offense got rid of Stephon Diggs in the offseason. Adam Thielen is going to be easily the leading target in Minnesota. He could get upwards of 150 to 160 targets this year, so maybe that's 8 to 10 per game. I think he's going to be playing more outside this year, maybe not as much slot. So we'll see if Jair Alexander will blanket him or not. But Adam Thielen's going to get fed targets. So you drafted Adam Thielen probably in the 3rd or 4th round. So go ahead and start him. And then really that's the only thing that's like the only players that I feel comfortable with on the Vikings. But I'm interested to see, who are their secondary players that step up into potential fantasy roles, whether that's tight end Irv Smith Jr. or the other tight end Kyle Rudolph. It sounds like Olabisi Johnson's the 2nd wide receiver here. He was able to hold off Justin Jefferson, who I think is the 3rd wide receiver. So these two guys might be on the field a lot. If the Packers are winning, we could see the Vikings, lean more towards the run, towards the pass. So just monitor these guys and just kind of know that this is going to be the guys that we trust every week. I mean, the Packers and the Vikings are pretty simple. We know the quarterback's going to be, thrown to Adam Thielen or Devontae Adams, and we know the running backs are going to get fed. So we'll just kind of have to see who steps up after the primary targets. And then we got the Dolphins at the Patriots. So Ryan Fitzpatrick was named the starter. The Dolphins actually sent away Josh Rosen, or they cut Josh Rosen, so he's not even in the picture anymore, which leaves Tua as the clear number 2. So we'll see if we're on Tua watch maybe in 3-4 weeks. But for now, Ryan Fitzpatrick's going to get the start. He actually played really well against the Patriots in Week 17 last year. I can't remember what he had, but I think he had 2 touchdowns and somewhere around like 20-plus points in the quarterback position. So I think Fitzpatrick is a low-end quarterback 2 in Superflex leagues. And then right now, I just looked at the injury report, and it seemed like Devontae Parker and Preston Williams were kind of limited in practice this week. So we really need to monitor their status throughout the rest of the week. But Devontae Parker destroyed Stephon Gilmore at Week 17 last year. So I would imagine Stephon Gilmore is going to draw Devontae Parker, and Preston Williams is going to be on their second cornerback. So we'll see if both of these guys can be healthy. But for now, I'm going to say Parker, if he goes, he's just going to be a wide receiver 3 for me. And if Preston Williams is a go, I think he's a flex play. I'm not positive about that because he is coming off the torn ACL last year. So I'm not opposed to leaving him on the bench and seeing what he can do for me first. But then there's Mike Giuseki, who I think is going to be probably the safest play out of all the Dolphins players. He really came on strong at the end of last year and developed a good chemistry with Ryan Fitzpatrick. And if you waited on tight end, you might have a tandem of Giuseki and somebody else. So I think Giuseki is going to be starting for me in a few of my leagues this year. But then there's this running game between Jordan Howard and Matt Breida. This is probably a common theme for me for Week 1 is I'm interested in seeing how these backfields shake out. Give them a game or two before I trust these guys. We know Jordan Howard's going to be the primary first and second down, the true running back here, and then Matt Breida is probably going to be worked in as a pass catcher. But I kind of would like to see a sample size before I jump in to the Dolphins running game. I mean, it's the Patriots defense, even though Tom Brady's not there, we know that Patriots defense is still going to be pretty good. So go ahead and just kind of rely on a little bit of the passing game for the Dolphins. But on the Patriots side, I'm excited to see Cam Newton in the New England Patriots offense. I got him as a quarterback 2 in Superflex. It's the Dolphins defense too. I know they got better in free agency in the secondary, but Cam Newton, if he's healthy and good to go, he's got quarterback 1 upside. But for now, he's a quarterback 2 in Superflex for me. And then when you think about how they're going to move the ball on offense, I really don't know what running back is going to get the ball. They have Rex Burkhead. Sony Michel is going to be healthy. And then they did put the second-year running back Damian Harris on IR, so he's out of the picture. But still, it's going to be Rex Burkhead, Sony Michel, and James White all fighting for carries. So I think I'm just leaning towards James White as an RB2 in PPR leagues, as that's probably the safest guy that I think I can tell people to start. And especially in PPR leagues, James White's always had running back 2 value. And if you think about what Cam Newton's been able to do with Christian McCaffrey the last few years, I think James White's going to fit in really well with Cam Newton. So I like White, and then I like Julian Edelman as well. Cam Newton had some success with DJ Moore and some of the other quicker receivers there. So Edelman's going to be the safe bet to lead the team in targets. So it's a really simple fantasy offense evaluation for the Patriots to me. Cam Newton's your Superflex QB2, James White's a PPR RB2, and Julian Edelman, he's a PPR wide receiver 2. He looks probably best as your 3 or your flex. And then I guess, I'm starting the Patriots defense. I know a couple of their players opted out, but they're easily the most well-coached team in the league. So go ahead and fire up that. And then Ryan Fitzpatrick's always kind of winging some balls around that could be intercepted. So a couple of receivers to keep an eye on, though, is N'Keal Harry and Jacoby Myers. And I think I should have listed Damiere Byrd, but there's kind of a shuffle for the second, third, and fourth receivers on the field. So I'm watching how that breaks out. And then I probably should have listed the rookie tight end Devin Asiasi. He's probably more of a dynasty play, but hey, if Cam Newton's had success with Greg Olsen at his tight end position before, maybe the rookie tight end could be useful for us at some point this year. So, but yeah, I'm excited to see Cam Newton. I'm expecting the Patriots to be able to pull this one out. So again, pretty simple fantasy evaluation there. Then let's look at the Eagles and the Washington football team. It's still weird to say Washington football team. My head just wants to say Redskins all the time. But anyways, the Eagles. Offensive line's been kind of banged up the last couple of weeks of training camp. We don't really know what's going on at receiver. I think Alshon Jeffrey is going to be out. I think he's on the PUP list. Maybe I haven't looked into that, but he's not going to play. So that leaves them with Desean Jackson as their starting receiver. There was some really good practice reports today out of Philadelphia saying that rookie receiver and first-round pick Jalen Reagor might be available for this week, if not week 2. So it looks like Reagor avoided a really bad injury with his shoulder. And it sounds like the Eagles could be at some full strength at the receiver position pretty soon. So we're looking here against the Washington football team here. Their secondary is not very good, but they have probably one of the best front sevens in football. I mean, they've got a ton of resources as first-round picks into that. They got the new second overall pick, Chase Young, added to the mix this year. So I'm thinking the Washington, I mean, what we talked at the top here is the Eagles offensive line's kind of dinged up. Washington's got a really good defensive line, pass rush, and linebacking group. So this might be a little bit of a struggle game here for the Eagles week 1. So that's why I have Carson Wentz here as a quarterback 2. I have Miles Sanders listed as an RB1, but we did see today some reports about them wanting to maybe limit him, I guess, the first game of the week. So we'll see if his progress gets better throughout the week. But I still have him as an RB1 in PPR leagues. We might have to limit our expectations down to a running back 2 at least. But if he's in there, he's going to get the ball and he can do some crazy things in open space. So you're starting Miles Sanders. You're starting Zach Ertz. We don't need to tell you to start Zach Ertz. But some of the flex options are really interesting here because we kind of talked at the top about the receiving group being kind of dinged up. And Desean Jackson is healthy. So if you remember his week 1 last year, he had I don't know what it was, 140 or 50 some yards and 2 touchdowns. Carson Wentz just hit him on 2 deep balls and he just blew up and then he gets hurt. So I'm thinking almost any week that Desean Jackson's healthy, he's probably going to make one of my DFS lineups. And if you're able to draft him at the end of your draft, you almost have to think about flexing him, especially against Washington. This is a revenge game for Desean Jackson, former Washington Redskin himself. So Desean Jackson's an interesting guy at the wide receiver 3 flex position. I have Dallas Goddard listed as a flex just because of the lack of depth at the receiver position. We saw Dallas Goddard come on really strong at the end of last year, and if you're in a PPR league, I mean, he's an easy 8 to 10 point floor with the potential for a touchdown. So I like Goddard as a tight end streamer, I guess. And then there's Boston Scott. If they're already talking about limiting Miles Sanders in week 1, we saw last year that they kind of worked Sanders and Scott in a tandem last year. And Boston Scott, his last 3 or 4 games of the season, I think he finished as the 10th best, top 10 running back. So. And then I like to look up how many fantasy points a defense allows to each position. And the Washington football team allows a lot of receptions, a lot of yards, and a lot of touchdowns to running backs. So you think about how Boston Scott's going to be used. He's kind of like a Darren Sproles, esque player. So I like Boston Scott, maybe even as a flex in a PPR league if you're kind of shorthanded there. So definitely if Boston Scott's available on your waiver wire, he should be owned. I think especially with Miles Sanders not starting the year 100% healthy, Boston Scott's going to be a guy that I'm watching a lot. And then you could probably roll out the Philadelphia Eagles defense. We know Dwayne Haskins is still a young quarterback. He can make some turnovers happen. They don't really have an established running game either. But then I'm also watching some of these secondary receivers in Greg Ward, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. We'll see if those guys can do anything from afar. But then on the Washington side of things, I think Dwayne Haskins was at week 16. He had a decent game against Philadelphia. I think he had 260 yards and 2 touchdowns, and then he added 26 rushing yards. So I kind of have Haskins here as a quarterback too. We know we like the Philadelphia Eagles front 7 part of their defense. Their secondary is a little suspect. They did add Darius Slay, but other than that, there's some shots that could be had there. So I kind of think Haskins has super flex QB2 value. I wouldn't trust him as my quarterback one. But then there's also the receivers here that I like, and Terry McLaurin and Steven Sims Jr. It wouldn't surprise me if Steven Sims actually led the team in receptions and targets this week. Terry McLaurin's probably going to be matched up against Darius Slay. And then the fun fact that Darius Slay saying last year the hardest receiver that he had to face was Terry McLaurin. And if you look back at what Terry McLaurin did over his rookie season, 2 of his 3 best games came against the Philadelphia Eagles. So again, that was no Slay, but Terry McLaurin also did pretty well against Darius Slay when he's on the Lions. So I think McLaurin's a wide receiver too with some upside. And then Steven Sims Jr., if you don't know who Steven Sims Jr. is yet, I think he's a guy that probably should not be hanging around your waiver wire. He's going to be a PPR wide receiver 3 flex, I think, most weeks, because teams are going to be focused on Terry McLaurin on the outside. So Steven Sims is going to be the primary slot receiver. And I just think the connection that he had with Haskins down the stretch, I think that's going to continue. So keep an eye out for him. And then we got Antonio Gibson here. There's kind of a handful of running backs in Washington. So it's Antonio Gibson, 2nd-round pick out of Memphis. They have J.D. McKissick listed as the starter, and then there's Bryce Love. I really don't know how the snaps and the situational, deployment is going to be. But if I had to bet, it's going to be Antonio Gibson probably getting the most touches. He deserves the most touches. He's probably the most athletic player of the group. So he's just nothing more than a flex right now. You probably had to spend maybe a 6th or 7th round pick on him in your draft. So he's definitely a name to monitor, but I kind of view him just as a flex in PPR leagues. I don't think we're starting the Washington defense, but I'm definitely keeping my eye on this tight end position here. Logan Thomas, the former quarterback out of where did he play? I think it was Virginia Tech. So he bounced around with the Lions, and now he gets to start for the Washington football team. So I'm kind of interested to see if he can run away with the job. He might be a potential waiver wire add down the line. And then, we'll see if McKissick or Bryce Love can get some touches. But for me, it's pretty simple. It's McLaurin, Sims, and then, we already talked about all the Eagles. So we'll see what the Washington football team looks like this year. Moving on here to the Raiders and Panthers. And I'm actually really excited to watch this game because I don't think there's going to be a lot of defense being played in this game. So I have Derek Carr as my quarterback 2 in Superflex leagues. He could be even a streaming option as far as DFS plays. But really, the Raiders, it's all about Josh Jacobs. I guess I'll just pull up the website here that I go to look at for my defensive stats. So if you go to FF Today and just hit stats, they have a fantasy column here that says fantasy football points allowed to, and then you just pick the position here. So if I filter by PPR, it's going to tell me that the worst teams against the running back last year were the Jaguars and the Panthers. The Panthers allowed over 2,000 rushing yards and 27 touchdowns to defenses in 2019. So no Luke Kuechly. I really don't know how many defensive starters I can name for Carolina. So this is going to be a team. Basically, these defenses are going to be defenses that we pick on all season. So the Jaguars and the Panthers, of course. So Josh Jacobs, he's going to be in a lot of my FanDuel, my DraftKings lineups. He's a top 5 running back this week. So make sure you get him. He's going to be in your lineup, but just make sure you look at him in DFS. And then it's the receiver group here with Daryl Williams being out. And we kind of talked about, I guess, let me just show you here what the Panthers allowed as receivers. They were 9th worst against the pass last year. So they allowed about 37.4 fantasy points per game to the receivers. So this is going to make me interested in guys like Henry Ruggs, Hunter Renfro, Bryan Edwards. So it sounds like Bryan Edwards is going to be the starting outside receiver. They're going to mix Henry Ruggs and probably Hunter Renfro on the outside and in the slot. So we'll see what happens there. But Hunter Renfro, he's the oldest receiver on the team, and he's only in his 2nd year. But he showed a lot of chemistry with Derek Carr down the stretch last year. So I'm kind of feeling Hunter Renfro could be a sneaky play this week. He's just a wide receiver 3 for me. He's probably more of a flex in PPR leagues. But I'm really excited to see how the receiving group looks like for Derek Carr because he had absolutely nothing to throw the ball to last year besides Darren Waller. So you're starting Darren Waller for sure, but I'm super excited to see how these rookie receivers and Hunter Renfro can do for the team this year. So, and then we're monitoring Jalen Richard. We want to see how many snaps he gets, how many receptions he gets, just for potential future use. So I really like the Raiders side of the ball this year, or against the Panthers this week. I think this could be a fun, potential sneaky high points affair. And then with that being said, I mean, the Panthers, their offense is no joke either. We don't really trust the Raiders' young secondary. So now I'm kind of into Teddy Bridgewater as a quarterback too in Superflex. You're starting Christian McCaffrey. I don't have to tell you to do that. And then you're starting DJ Moore as well. So just because McCaffrey and DJ Moore, like these are two premier picks in fantasy football drafts this year. So Teddy Bridgewater is going to be dishing out all these fantasy points to these guys. So I kind of like, especially in a DFS lineup, if you can stack Teddy and McCaffrey or Teddy and DJ Moore, I'm open to that. And then there's some interesting pieces down here at the bottom. I think Robbie Anderson can be flexed, maybe a wide receiver 3 this week. It sounded like he had a really good connection with Teddy Bridgewater in this offense. And Robbie Anderson actually has ties. I know the whole thing is like this offense is new offensive coordinator, new coach, new quarterback, and then Robbie Anderson's new. But these things all kind of tied together. I think Robbie Anderson had connections to the offensive coordinator back when he was at Temple. And it sounds like Teddy Bridgewater was finding him, early and often in camp. And then there's Curtis Samuel down here. I have Samuel on the bench because he was kind of limited with a hamstring injury the last couple of weeks. So I feel like the safest play would be Robbie Anderson as your flex. We're not starting these defenses at all. I don't trust the Raiders against McCaffrey, and I don't trust the Panthers versus Josh Jacobs. So we'll kind of monitor these guys, but I'm kind of excited. This could be a fantasy bonanza for some of these players, and probably one of the I think this game's going to be on the Red Zone channel quite a bit. So we'll see how that goes. And then we're looking at here the Indianapolis Colts and the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jaguars, again, I just kind of showed a few minutes ago, the Jaguars do not have a defense that can stop the run. We see they were the worst team against the run last year, almost 1,900 yards, 18 touchdowns, and then they're really susceptible in the passing game, 83 receptions, almost 800 yards and 4 touchdowns. So the Raiders and the Panthers, these are the two teams that you want to make sure your running backs are playing against this year. So again, I'm going to skip Philip Rivers for now. We'll get to him in a sec, but it's all about Jonathan Taylor as your RB2 flex. And then just because I think the Colts could really dictate this game and get a lot of rushing attempts, it's going to make Marlon Mack an interesting flex play. So I feel great about Jonathan Taylor. I'm interested in Marlon Mack because, all he needs is like 10 carries and a touchdown to make our week. And then there's also Naheem Hines there who could be getting involved in the passing game, but you're probably leaving Hines on the bench. We kind of want to see what this running back field looks like first. But Jonathan Taylor, Marlon Mack, the carries, it's not going to surprise me if the Colts run the ball 35, 40 times in this one. So I think I just have Philip Rivers as a quarterback too. We don't trust the Jaguars defense worth a damn. But Philip Rivers, man, he could get all of his work done in the first half. So he's just a super flex quarterback too for me. You're probably starting T.Y. Hilton. I have him listed as a wide receiver 2, but he probably feels more like a wide receiver 3. I think T.Y. could easily get, open deep, and we'll see what Philip Rivers can do for him. But T.Y. Hilton's probably the one that I feel the most confident about in the passing game. Jack Doyle could be a sneaky low-end tight end 1 in PPR leagues. And then basically I don't know if I'm going to say to start Paris Campbell. I have him here as the flex. But between Paris Campbell and Michael Pittman Jr., I'm super excited to see what the pecking order is for Philip Rivers and targets. I think Paris Campbell could be a quick little slot option for Philip Rivers, kind of like how Keenan Allen was so useful for him in the past. And then Michael Pittman's kind of like a combination, of if you blended like Keenan Allen and Mike Williams together into one player, Michael Pittman might be that blend. So I like both guys, but I don't know. I think I'm going to move Paris Campbell down to bench, and we'll see how this offense looks. But I'm banking on the running backs here doing all the heavy lifting. And then with the Jaguars, they're not going to be able to stop many offenses this year. So I'm basically fading all the running backs. Gardner Minshew is going to be a quarterback 2 in Superflex leagues. He's going to throw the ball to DJ Chark, and that's pretty much it. And then I had Chris Thompson here in the flex for PPR leagues, but we just saw them sign Dare Ogunbowale, and I know it's this week, so they're probably not going to be able to use him as much. But Chris Thompson's got low-end RB2 flex value in PPR leagues. If we're expecting the Jaguars to really struggle this year and throw the ball a lot, I think that might be something that could be useful for fantasy. So we're not starting the Jacksonville defense at all, and then we really need to monitor these receivers here. And that is D.D. Westbrook, Laviska Shenault, and Chris Conley. It sounds like Laviska and Chris Conley are actually ahead of D.D. Westbrook on the depth chart. There was rumor that D.D. was going to get traded or cut. And then, I mean, they spent a high second-round pick on Laviska, so they're going to try to get him involved as much as he can. He even can run the ball, so I'm super excited about Laviska. He shouldn't be on the waiver wires. He should be a receiver that is like one of your last people on your bench. So go ahead and look for his availability. And then Chris Conley was also an interesting guy at the end of last year, but I mean, in terms of trust, I really only trust Gardner Minshew to throw the ball a ton and maybe rack up some garbage points. And then I really only trust DJ Chark in the passing game and maybe Chris Thompson. So I'm thinking this is going to be a theme here for Jacksonville. I do have Divine Ozigbo and James Robinson listed here. I think they named Robinson as the starting running back, but I need to see what this team looks like before I'm going to whip out any of these running backs. So I think the Colts are going to have themselves a pretty good day and get off to a 1-0 start. And then we're looking at here the Cleveland Browns and the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens, I mean, they got a really good defense. They got Lamar Jackson in the running game. So we'll see what Baker Mayfield can do. I think Baker actually played, if I remember correctly, Baker actually played the Ravens, decently last year. If I filter here by quarterbacks, I just want to see what he did. So he was quarterback 16 last year, whatever. But his 2 games against Baltimore, we see week 4, threw for 342 passing yards and 1 touchdown. I mean, that's 15.8 points. And then week 16 here, you're going to see 192 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick for 14 points. So I'm thinking you're looking at about 14 to 16 points as a floor. He could be used as a quarterback 2 in Superflex. So nothing more. But this one's all going to be about Nick Chubb and probably Kareem Hunt. I think these are the 2 guys that I feel most confident about. We know the Browns are going to want to run the ball, establish the run, and get these guys rolling to keep Lamar off the field and eat up clock. So you're starting Chubb, first-round pick, second-round pick, whatever. And then you're probably starting Kareem Hunt in PPR leagues as your 2 or your flex. But then you got these receivers here. If we're not that excited about Baker Mayfield, but potentially he could throw a touchdown or 2 and maybe get over 250 yards, maybe even 300. You have to like Odell Beckham. I'm not going to comment on any of the Odell Beckham rumors this week, but Odell Beckham, you probably drafted him in the 4th, maybe 5th round of your fantasy drafts. He's going to be a wide receiver 3 for us this week. Austin Hooper, you probably spent, a top 12 tight end pick on him. So you can go ahead and throw Austin Hooper out there as your tight end 1. And then there's Jarvis Landry. I've been kind of questioning just how healthy Jarvis Landry is. It looks like he's good to go. I haven't seen him on the injury reports, but you probably spent a good mid-round pick on Jarvis Landry, so you go ahead and get him in as your wide receiver 3 flex. But I'm kind of limiting my expectations for the Browns offense. But, I mean, if you really think about how is any team going to beat the Ravens this year, they have to keep Lamar Jackson on the sidelines. They have to run the ball, eat up clock. And the Browns might be able to do that. They might be a little bit more competitive than people think here. So if they can hit on some of these play-action deep shots to Odell or Landry or get Hooper going deep down the middle, this could be a fun game for the Browns. I'm not touching the Browns defense at all. And I mean, I think for fantasy, they don't like the guys that I have listed here, like this is what the chart's going to look like pretty much all year. They don't really have any other secondary pieces that I want, maybe David Njoku if anything happens, but pretty simple evaluation for the Browns. On the Ravens side of things, you're starting Lamar Jackson, you're starting Mark Andrews, no question. You probably drafted Mark Ingram as your RB2, your RB3, so he could be your RB2 or flex. Marquise Brown was, around 6 or 7 picks, so you're going to probably fire him up as your wide receiver 3. And then the really interesting guy here that was kind of going in the mid rounds of drafts is J.K. Dobbins. I have him listed here as a flex, but I might move that down to bench just because I'm not really too comfortable in his role just yet. They did say, maybe like a week ago that there's going to be a significant role for him. But it's kind of like the theme that I was talking about from some of the other games above. So I kind of want to wait and see, just how they decide to split up the backfield touches. So I love J.K. Dobbins' game. I love the talent, but I think I need a few more data points before I trust him. And then, you can go ahead and start the Ravens defense. Baker Mayfield was 3rd in interceptions last year, so anything can happen. A defensive touchdown could easily, happen this weekend. So as far as guys on the bench, Miles Boykin's going to be the wide receiver 2. I'll keep an eye on him. He might be a guy that's a hot waiver wire ad after the first week. But yeah, it's just so exciting to see Lamar Jackson back, and hopefully that's a game that has a lot of points. So moving on here to how many afternoon games? I think there's maybe 3 or 4 afternoon games this week 1. So Chargers at the Bengals. I have Tyrod Taylor listed as a quarterback 2 in Superflex. This might be one of the more popular streaming guys for DFS, DraftKings and FanDuel this week. He's going to be useful with his legs, and he's got some pretty good, options to throw the ball to, especially Austin Eckler here. So I have Eckler listed as an RB1. If I quick look at how I want to look at those fantasy points allowed to position again real quick. So if we go to the running back tab, we're going to see probably the Bengals as a bottom 10 defense against the running back. So yeah, they were 10th worst against the running back last year, giving up about 26 fantasy points per game. So Austin Eckler, if we look quick here even deeper at the details, they allowed 76 catches, 4 touchdowns, almost 700 yards to the running back position. So Eckler, you spent a second-round pick on him. He's going to be a stud. Go ahead. I mean, I don't need to tell you to start Austin Eckler. But then we got Keenan Allen down here. And I'm actually interested in Keenan Allen because I think people are sleeping on how good of a passer Tyrod Taylor is. We had a couple game sample of Tyrod Taylor throwing the ball to Jarvis Landry a couple years before Baker Mayfield took over. And he actually just pummeled Jarvis Landry with targets. So I think, especially because Mike Williams is out, we could see Keenan Allen just force-fed, 10, 11, 12 targets. Against the Bengals. The Bengals do not have a very good passing defense. If we look at the numbers here against receiver, you're going to see the Bengals. Is this filtered by PPR? So the Bengals actually were 20th best against wide receiver last year. I think that's just because teams were able to run on them. But I can't even name the starting cornerback for the Bengals. I thought he got hurt. He was a guy that they signed. I think it was Trey Waynes, and I think he got hurt. So the Bengals secondary is very inexperienced. I could see Keenan Allen, having a nice PPR day as your wide receiver too. And then because Mike Williams is out, that almost makes me more comfortable to start a tight end like Hunter Henry. So you probably drafted Hunter Henry as a tight end 1, top 10 tight end this year. So go ahead and roll him out. And then I guess I could probably say I might be interested in starting the Chargers defense. I know Derwin James is out, but Bosa, the pass rush, Melvin Ingram, they got some really nice pieces on that defensive line, and they're playing against a rookie, against the Bengals. So the Chargers defense is probably a start. I'll add that there after the show. But then guy I'm keeping an eye on is Joshua Kelly, rookie running back out of UCLA. I think he was a 4th-round pick. You think about how the Chargers have ran their offense the last few years. They've used Melvin Gordon as the hammer. And every time I watch Josh Kelly, his UCLA tape, he reminds me of Jordan Howard. I know Jordan Howard's not a popular name in fantasy circles, but Jordan Howard's a good runner. And I think Josh Kelly might be a little bit better of a pass catcher. And if they do decide to kind of mimic what they've been doing of the past, we could see Josh Kelly or maybe even Justin Jackson get some runs. So I'm interested to see how they use the second running back or even the third running back. But yeah, I'm kind of liking the Chargers here. This could be a fun game. The Bengals defense isn't very trustworthy. But as we get to the Bengals side of thing, Joe Burrow, man, if you drafted Joe Burrow in a super flex leagues, you might be inclined to get him in there as your QB2. Joe Mixon, 1st-round pick, probably a 2nd-round pick at worst. You're going to go ahead and start him as your RB1. You drafted him. You're not going to bench him. And then you got Tyler Boyd, who I think is going to be a wide receiver 2-3 for the most part of this year. So I have him as a wide receiver 2 this year. We're expecting the Bengals to run a lot of 3 wide receiver sets. We're expecting them to lose a handful of games, which means to a lot of passing. So I think Tyler Boyd's locked in for a good amount of targets. He's got a really high floor. And then as long as A.J. Green's healthy, I think he's a wide receiver 3 with a lot of upside. We'll see if Joe Burrow can get a good connection with him. I don't think A.J. Green got a lot of exposure to Joe Burrow at camp, but it's A.J. Green. So as long as A.J. Green's healthy and you drafted him, he's a wide receiver 3 flex option. I have Auden Tate here as a flex. I might move him down to the bench spot because he's going to be competing with John Ross for that, that 3rd receiving spot. So those guys might kind of eat into each other's playing time. And then we're also monitoring Giovanni Bernard's play time behind Mixon. But for the most part, I think this is going to be a heavy passing attack. Burrow to Boyd to Green. I should have probably listed CJ Uzama. He might be a tight end waiver wire guy that we pick up. What if Uzama goes out there and gets, 7 targets, catches 5 of them for a touchdown? Uzama might be a name to keep an eye on, as well as John Ross. John Ross, he's still a really good receiver. I think the first 2 games last year, he just blew everything up and had like back-to-back 100-yard games and 2 or 3 touchdowns. So Ross could be a guy that gets off to a hot start. Auden Tate could get off to a hot start. I'm probably going to move Tate down. But a lot of excitement for the Bengals. They haven't had much to be excited about lately, but I think they got a good one in Burrow. So we'll see how this game goes. And then we're looking at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the New Orleans Saints. Tom Brady, I have him listed as a quarterback 1. He's best as a quarterback 2 in Superflex, but I still feel really good about Tom Brady and his passing weapons here. You're starting Chris Godwin. I don't have to tell you to do that. But the big name here is Mike Evans. He missed practice today with a hamstring injury. I think it might be the same hamstring injury that he lost his last 3 games of 2019. So I have to monitor his practice reports, but by all accounts, it sounds like he's going to be questionable heading into the game. So he's going to be a game time decision. So just make sure, and it's one of those late games. So if you don't have a hedge, you're going to have to be watching these reports, leading up to Sunday morning. So if Mike Evans is playing, I'm going to play him. If he's out and you want to get a piece of this Bucs offense, a guy like the backup receiver here, Scotty Miller, might be a name to keep an eye on. Or otherwise, I'm just thinking the tight ends are going to do a lot of damage with Gronk and OJ Howard. So keep an eye on those guys. But for the most part, it's going to be Brady, and we're going to trust who he throws the ball to. So I love Brady. I love Godwin. I like Gronk, and I kind of like OJ Howard, especially if Evans is out. But then you got this huge mess, at the running back field, whether it's Ronald Jones or Leonard Fournette. They just got Fournette a week ago, so I feel like Ronald Jones has the leg up this week. And Ronald Jones, man, all it takes is he's got some crazy burst, and it sounds like he had a really good camp. And they're Bruce Arians has reiterated that he is their starter, so I'm open to Ronald Jones leading the team in carries week 1, and we'll see what he can do. But Leonard Fournette, he might be on a snap count. They might have like a limited package or 2 for him to be into the game, but I think I feel safest about Ronald Jones being a flex play. I'm going to leave Leonard Fournette on the bench. I want to see how this offense looks first. I really don't know how many touches he's going to get. Like I said, he's only been on the team for 5 days, 7 days or something like that. And then you got, OJ Howard, Scott Miller, LaShawn McCoy. I really want to see what these guys do first before I throw them out there. So it's really, I trust Brady. I trust Godwin, and I trust Evans if he's out there. You probably drafted Gronk as your tight end 1, so go ahead and do that. But it's going to be fun to see how this new look Tampa Bay offense looks with Tom Brady. And then on the Saints side of things, the Tampa's defense was not good last year. Their secondary got beat up. They had one of the best running defenses. So we're gonna like Drew Brees in this one. I don't need to tell you to start Kamara. I don't need to tell you to start Michael Thomas. But it's a couple of these guys here at the end of the roster here, whether it's Emmanuel Sanders or Jared Cook. I think a lot of people drafted Jared Cook as their tight end 1. Tampa Bay wasn't the greatest against tight end last year. But I feel really confident in Jared Cook. I think Drew Brees hooked up with him a lot in the red zone last year. So go ahead and start Jared Cook. But the guy to keep an eye on is Emmanuel Sanders. The Saints really haven't had a dominant wide receiver 2 for quite some time. I'm thinking the last time we saw this was maybe like the Brandon Cooks era, where they had was it Cooks and Thomas on the same team for a year or 2? I can't recall, but it's been a long time since Drew Brees has had 2 really legit wide receivers. So I think because of all the attention Kamara is going to get, all the attention Thomas is going to get, and even Jared Cook, Emmanuel Sanders is kind of a sleeper. So I like him as a wide receiver 3 flex. I really don't know if I have maybe listed for the defenses here. I really don't know if I trust the defenses in this game. It feels like it's going to be a heavy offensive battle. And then just guys on the bench to monitor: Traquan Smith, Ty Montgomery, Latavius Murray. We'll see how many snaps and carries these guys get. But I think this is the America's game of the week. This is the one that's going to be on TV. So I'm really excited to watch the new Tom Brady offense, and we'll see if Drew Brees can defend the dome here with all his weapons. So that's going to be a really fun game to watch. Hopefully a lot of fantasy points. So now we're getting to the final afternoon game of week 1, Cardinals at the 49ers. You're starting Kyler Murray. I don't need to tell you to do that. His matchup it doesn't matter what his matchup is. You're going to start Kyler Murray. And then Kenyon Drake, you probably drafted him with a second-round pick. You're going to start him no matter what. DeAndre Hopkins, you probably spent a second or third-round pick on him. You're starting him no matter what. But the questions come in at Christian Kirk and Larry Fitzgerald. The rest of the offense is pretty, predictable. But Christian Kirk, now that DeAndre Hopkins is there, he's going to have a lot of nice matchups. And I can just see Hopkins getting a lot of attention. Teams have to focus on Kyler Murray and his scrambling ability and watching out for Kenyon Drake. So Christian Kirk's going to get a lot of favorable matchups. So I like him as a wide receiver 3 flex. And then there's always Larry Fitzgerald, who's going to be probably messing around in the slot. And just from what I remember the last 2 or 3 years, Larry Fitzgerald always starts out hot. So he could be a guy that, you plug him in as your wide receiver 3 flex, or you start him in DFS and see what happens. But the 49ers, the defense is so good there. So this might be a little bit of a tough start, but I like the offense for Arizona. I think they're going to have a really good year. So I'm interested in all these guys. I'm probably not starting the Cardinals defense, but I'm going to monitor backup running back Chase Edmonds. We'll see how many touches and targets he gets. He might be, looking at 8 to 10 total touches this week. And then there's Dan Arnold, who might be, a waiver wire tight end pickup at some point. And then on the 49ers side of things, the Cardinals defense last year was absolute garbage. So if we look at the tight end fantasy points allowed, they were number one, or I guess the worst team against tight end by a significant amount too. You see 19.5 fantasy points per game. The next closest team was 15.2. So this is cleared above the worst team against tight ends. So George Kittle I don't need to tell you to start George Kittle, but George Kittle, man, he's going to have one hell of a week one. And then against receivers, the Cardinals were the 8th worst. Let's see how they were against running back. Against running back here, they were the 11th worst. So the Cardinals are going to be a defense that we want to pick on. So you're starting Jimmy Garoppolo as a quarterback 2 in Superflex. I think Raheem Mostert's a running back 1 this week. The receivers are kind of dinged up. So I think they're going to rely heavily on the run game. They're going to throw the ball to George Kittle. I don't know if Deebo Samuel is playing. I have him there as a wide receiver 3 with a question mark. So we have to monitor his practice reports throughout the week. If he plays, I don't even know if I feel comfortable playing with, putting him out there in my lineup. Gun to my head, I think I'm only comfortable with Garoppolo, Raheem Mostert, and George Kittle. They do have some interesting flex options, whether that's receiver Kendrick Bourne or Tevin Coleman. I don't feel great about them, but they could be used as flex plays. You're probably going to just start the 49ers defense. You probably spent a good draft investment on them. And then players that I'm watching, Brandon Ayuk, rookie receiver, out of Arizona State. We'll see if he can make some noise in his first game. And then there's Jerick McKinnon. I'm super excited about his return. We'll see how many touches he gets. And he might even eat into Tevin Coleman's role a little bit, which is just why I feel more comfortable about Raheem Mostert. Because I know Mostert's like the best first and second down running back, and we'll see how they decide to split third down duties. But yeah, I don't know. The 49ers are kind of like they're low-key kind of dinged up. I know they have a great offensive line. The defense is a little banged up right now. So the Cardinals could be really pesky. And I think they played them, to the wire in both games last year. So I think this could be a really fun game in the NFC West to start the year. And then we're coming here to the Sunday night football game, Dallas Cowboys at the Los Angeles Rams. I think this one's going to be a really fun game. I don't like either of these defenses in this one. So, I don't need to tell you to start Prescott. I don't need to tell you to start Ezekiel Elliott. You're starting Amari Cooper. You're probably starting Michael Gallup now as a solid wide receiver 2 or 3. But after that, you have rookie wide receiver CeeDee Lamb, who I have slated as a wide receiver 3 flex. And then I have Blake Jarwin as a low-end tight end 1. I think the Rams were not – let's look at tight end real quick here for the Rams. So last year, the Rams were midway against the tight end. They allowed about 12 fantasy points per game. But against receiver, the Rams were also mid-pack. So the Rams defense is a little bit better than I guess I give them credit for. They do have Jalen Ramsey, who just got a $105 million deal. So he might be – I don't know if he's going to follow Amari Cooper around, but I would expect that he's going to drop Cooper a lot in coverages, which is why I like Gallup and also kind of why I like CeeDee Lamb, because if Dak sees Jalen Ramsey almost shadowing Amari Cooper, he's going to look elsewhere in Jarwin. But you spent too high of a draft capital to bench your 3rd or 4th round pick in Cooper. So you're starting him, but I think this could be a really juicy game for Gallup, Lamb, and Jarwin. We're probably not going to start the Dallas Cowboys defense. And then I just have Tony Pollard there as a name to monitor. I'm probably starting Jared Goff as a quarterback 1 this week. If we look at fantasy points allowed by quarterback, the Cowboys, where are they? The Cowboys, I guess, are one of the better teams, but I think it's because teams were able to run on them. But you think about how the Rams are going to move the ball. We don't really know what they're doing at running back. They're saying Cam Akers, Malcolm Brown, and Darrell Henderson are going to be in a split. So I feel most comfortable about Jared Goff being a quarterback 1 or at least a quarterback 2 in Superflex leagues. We know he's throwing the ball to Robert Woods. We know he's throwing the ball to Cooper Kupp. Those guys are in your lineup. And then there's Tyler Higbee, which I know a lot of people either loved or hated, in the draft process this year. But I'm a fan of Tyler Higbee. I don't think Jared Goff's going to forget what he did down the stretch. So I think Higbee's a tight end 1. And then if I show you guys quickly what the Dallas Cowboys, they cannot, guard the tight end very well. They were the 3rd worst against the tight end last year. So I think Higbee's a smash play this week. And I think Cam Akers, he's kind of a risky RB2 flex for me at running back. They've already kind of talked about Malcolm Brown being the starter week 1, so we'll see how that plays out. So I really think I might drop him down to the bench spot. We're not starting either defense in this one, but I'm going to monitor Cam Akers. I'm going to monitor rookie receiver Van Jefferson, Josh Reynolds, and Malcolm Brown. But go ahead and I feel real comfortable about Goff and his passing weapons, as well as Prescott, his passing weapons, and Elliott. So this one could be a really fun, week 1 to Sunday Night Football. And then we got 2 Monday Night Football games here as I'm approaching an hour long here. This is a lot of games to get through, so hopefully you're picking up some information here that is helpful to you. But we got the Steelers at the Giants. Giants pass defense is not very good. I think I'm starting Ben Roethlisberger as a QB1, definitely as a QB2 in Superflex. Every week that James Conner is healthy, he's a top 5, top 10 running back upside. So James Conner is locked into your RB1 spot. He looks great as your RB2. But you're starting Juju Smith-Schuster. Deontay Johnson becomes an interesting guy because he's probably drafted as your wide receiver 3 or your first guy on your bench. But I have him up here as a wide receiver 2 because I think teams are going to be focused on Juju, which means Deontay could be running free and getting open really quickly. So I love Deontay this week. I have Eric Ebron listed as a tight end 1 just because I think it's been a while since it's almost been forever since he's had an athletic tight end that can do what Eric Ebron does. And it sounds like Eric Ebron has really improved as a pass blocker, and he's really getting, some respect and some really good words out of Ben Roethlisberger on him. So I'm into Eric Ebron. I'm starting the Steelers defense, and then we're going to monitor rookie Chase Claypool, Benny Snell. We'll see what James Washington can do, but I'm not starting those guys. But I think the Steelers offense is going to have a really easy day against the Giants here on the opening of Monday night. Daniel Jones, I have him listed as a quarterback 2 in Superflex, but that feels scary to me. The Steelers defense is no joke. If we look and see what they did against quarterbacks last year, they were, one of the best teams against the quarterback last year. So I'm probably not. I'm a little bit nervous about Daniel Jones. You're starting Saquon Barkley, of course. But if I'm nervous about Daniel Jones and how this offense is going to, be throwing the ball, what does that mean for Sterling Shepard, Evan Ingram, Golden Tate? I'm probably not starting Darius Slayton, week 1. I want to see how he looks in this offense. Shepard's their number 1 receiver technically. I think he could have, low-end wide receiver 3 flex value. Same with Golden Tate. Golden Tate's, interesting in PPR leagues because of the volume and the quick receptions. And then as long as Evan Ingram's healthy, you're going to roll him out as your tight end 1. But again, I'm just nervous about the Giants passing game. I feel great about Saquon Barkley, though, so we'll see if the Giants can keep up. But I'm expecting the Steelers to kind of, do what they typically do. They're going to run the ball. They're going to play good defense. And then they got some really, fun receivers here to get the ball to, and maybe a new tight end. So we'll see how that works. But then we're going to wrap it up here with the final Monday night game in the final game of week 1. And that is the Tennessee Titans at the Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos, man, they just lost Von Miller. I heard it's potentially for the season. They're not really quite sure yet what Von's going to be doing. He might have surgery pretty soon to see if he can get back quicker. I think he's meeting with a specialist in Green Bay for that. But the Broncos defense was already not going to be, super fantastic this year anyway. So now that they're without Von Miller, I'm thinking the Titans are going to have themselves a pretty nice day. So I'm starting Ryan Tannehill as a super flex in QB2 leagues. I don't need to tell you to start Derrick Henry, first round pick. I shouldn't have to tell you to start A.J. Brown, who's probably a 3rd or 4th round pick for you. I think he might be drawn up, against A.J. Bouye in coverage, but I think it was like week 11 or week 12 when Bouye was still on the Jaguars, and we saw A.J. Brown go for like 130 yards and a touchdown. So I don't think that's going to stop him very much. And then if you think about the next best target in this offense, I think it's Jonnu Smith. And I don't believe the Broncos were very good against the tight end last year. Let me look here. That's against quarterback. So let's just see how they were against the tight end. So the Broncos were the 12th worst against tight end, about 12.8 points per game. I think Jonnu Smith's like the second leading guy in targets there. So I'm open to these. I think this is probably going to be my fantasy evaluation for the Titans all year. Is Tannehill, quarterback 2 in Superflex, Derrick Henry, yes, A.J. Brown, yes, and Jonnu Smith is a fringe tight end 1. I might actually be willing to start the Titans defense. We just saw them sign Jadeveon Clowney, so that's kind of exciting. But as far as other players on this team, Corey Davis, I'm just not excited about Corey Davis. Adam Humphries is the name to keep an eye on. We'll see if he can hop Corey Davis in targets. And then on the Broncos side of things, I think Drew Lock is just like a really low-end quarterback 2 in Superflex leagues. If you have someone better, I think I would probably start a guy like Tyrod Taylor over Drew Lock, especially this week against the Titans. I have Melvin Gordon as your RB2. He feels best as an RB3 or a flex. In PPR leagues, it's fine. I think he's going to be used as a pass catcher more than Phillip Lindsay. But then you got Cortland Sutton, who I have him as a wide receiver 3. I think his boom bust rate kind of bugs me a little bit. So he's either going to have a really good game or he's going to have a not so good game. So we'll see if he can kind of uplift his game and get more targets and receptions to kind of boost his floor. I think Noah Fant has, tight end 1 streaming option, but I don't really feel great about it. I'm actually really excited to see what Jerry Jeudy can do in this offense. He reportedly had a really solid camp, and I think Drew Lock is starting to see that Jerry Jeudy gets open quickly. So I think there's going to be a potential that Jerry Jeudy leads the team in receptions or targets this week. And then Phillip Lindsay, I guess I'm really curious to see how Melvin Gordon, Phillip Lindsay split works. I think Gordon's going to get more PPR work, but it wouldn't surprise me if they both get, 13 or 14 carries in this one, and we'll see how it works. So I think it's going to be kind of a moving target. We'll see how it works. And I don't think I'm starting the Broncos defense, and there's really no other, pieces of this offense that I want. But for the Broncos side of things, I'm super excited to see how Drew Lock looks year 2. We'll watch the running game. We'll see, the pecking order for targets between Sutton, Jeudy, and Fant. I'm super excited about Jerry Jeudy. So this could be a really fun way to end our Monday nights. But I think that's going to do it. I think I have to, on thefantasyfellowship.com, I have to type up, some more of these notes. But all the start-sit charts are going to be there. I'll probably tweet this link out again on Friday, maybe Saturday, just with my updates. But again, I'm doing this every week. I think Wednesday nights are going to be my night. I'm going to try to not make these an hour long. But as you can tell, there's a lot to talk about. So I'm going to try doing my best to condense these. But I hope this helps. If you need any questions, you can leave a comment in the video or, hit me up on Twitter at theFellowKGB. We also have a Facebook page if you just search the Fantasy Fellowship. So I'm open for questions. I'm going to have my no problem, Blake. Thank you for joining, though. You can watch the rest of it back. But hit me up on Twitter if there's any questions. I'm open to, start-sit questions or whatever you need. But, yeah, thank you so much for your time. Don't forget to leave a comment, like, subscribe to the channel. And football's back, guys. It's so exciting. So I wish you the best of luck. Enjoy the game tomorrow night, and we'll see you in another video. Peace.